Welcome to Trending Unpacked, the show where we explore the stories behind the trends shaping our world.
And today, we are diving straight into something huge, really the core of the modern tech arms race.
Absolutely. We're talking about the silicon battleground that's basically dictating the speed of AI development.
Yeah, exactly. And if you thought, the old Intel versus AMD rivalry back in the 90s was intense.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Well, buckle up.
Yeah.
This is a whole different level. We're talking AI chips now.
Definitely. And if you've been keeping an eye on the markets, maybe since, late 2025, one name keeps popping up. AMD. Advanced Micro Devices.
Nonstop, right?
It's been a flood. Headlines, chatter online, analysts. Everyone seems to be positioning AMD as the main challenger, maybe the only serious challenger to NVIDIA.
NVIDIA, the giant in the room, the company that seemed untouchable in AI hardware.
Exactly. And it really kicked off, didn't it? After AMD posted some really strong quarterly earnings, the stock started trending like crazy.
Oh, yeah. The financial world just latched onto that narrative. AMD versus NVIDIA. The next big showdown.
So there's this massive sense of anticipation building.
It's palpable. And you hear the debate everywhere, don't you? Online, on finance channels.
Is AMD really setting itself up to be the next huge player in AI infrastructure? Are they genuinely going to command a massive chunk of this market?
That's the billion-dollar question, literally.
Yeah.
Or is it maybe, as some of the skeptics are whispering?
Type.
Yeah, maybe just investor optimism kind of jumping on the bandwagon, assigning this huge valuation to any company that's even near the AI space.
Even if the competitive landscape, facing NVIDIA, is just incredibly daunting.
Right. Regardless of that huge mountain to climb.
And getting to the bottom of that distinction hype versus actual hardware capability, that's really our mission for you today in this discussion.
We need to unpack what's actually going on. Look at the tech, the real silicon.
Dissect the market strategies AMD is using. Can they actually pull this off?
And crucially, does their history give us any clues? Have they shown they can break the hold of a dominant player like NVIDIA before?
Yeah, we need to get past just the stock ticker buzz and really examine the foundations of what they're building, because this isn't just about chips, is it?
Not at all. This is about the future of computing. Who builds the engines for AI?
It's a fascinating moment, truly. Feels like we're watching industrial history being made.
Absolutely. This battle, it's going to shape R&D budgets globally. It'll influence how fast, how cheaply new AI models get trained.
And ultimately, it decides who holds the keys, the keys to the next big technological shift.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Okay, so let's lay some groundwork here. We need some historical context, because AMD showing up as a challenger now, it's not random. It feels like it's baked into their company history, their DNA almost.
Oh, definitely. You have to look back. They were founded way back in 1969.
Right. And for decades, decades they were struggling, weren't they?
Totally. The narrative, and our sources are really clear on this, was always that they long played second fiddle to Intel, especially in the CPU market, the brains of computers.
They were seen as the underdog, scrappy, sure, but always trailing technologically, maybe the budget option.
That was the perception for a very long time. Intel just seemed to always outspend them, outmaneuver them. AMD was often, the cheaper alternative, maybe not quite as fast.
But that perception, it didn't just change, it shattered. And the sources, they all seem to point to one pivotal factor in what they call AMD's remarkable comeback.
Leadership.
Specifically, CEO Lisa Su, her arrival seems to mark the turning point.
Absolutely critical. Her leadership, her vision, it wasn't just a minor course correction. It was a fundamental shift, a deep commitment to getting the technology right, starting almost a decade ago now.
It wasn't just about marketing or cutting costs.
No, it's technology first. That was the core of her strategy. She refocused R&D. Poured resources into building entirely new competitive architectures, the Zen architecture for CPUs.
Which led to the Ryzen chips. Huge success.
Huge. And the RDA architecture for GPUs, leading to Radeon graphics cards.
Which started challenging NVIDIA in gaming.
Exactly. And the key was they started competing not just on price anymore, but on performance. And really importantly, on power efficiency too. Getting more calculations done for every watt of electricity.
And the results were, pretty astonishing. The Ryzen CPUs, the Radeon GPUs, they didn't just nibble at the edges, they took serious market share.
They absolutely did. They forced Intel and NVIDIA, these giants, to wake up and dramatically speed up their own innovation cycles just to stay ahead. It completely changed AMD's reputation.
Okay, but hold on. You're saying they took on Intel in CPUs and NVIDIA in GPUs basically at the same time? Those are two different, massive, incredibly complex markets. How did they manage the resources for that? The R&D budget, the engineering talent? fighting two wars at once.
Ah, that's where the strategy gets really clever.
Mm.
And it connects directly to why they might succeed in AI now. Lisa Su and her team understood architectural reuse, meaning the breakthroughs they made for Ryzen CPUs, things like the chiplet design where you combine smaller specialized silicon dies, the manufacturing process improvements with partners like TSMC, the expertise in high-speed interconnects,
Okay.
and the parallel processing knowledge gained from building powerful Radeon GPUs. All those learnings, those technological building blocks, they weren't isolated. They became transferable assets.
So advancements in one area helped the other. It wasn't two completely separate battles.
Precisely. They leveraged success in CPUs to inform and fund GPU development, and vice versa. They built up this, institutional muscle memory for disrupting markets through core architectural innovation. It was incredibly efficient.
Got it. So when this massive AI wave started really cresting in the early 2020s, AMD wasn't coming into it cold. They weren't the same old scrappy underdog starting from zero.
Not at all. They're already a tech powerhouse, validated by the market. They had a recent, very public track record of designing complex silicon, executing flawlessly, and successfully taking on entrenched leaders.
And that credibility, that's gold, right? Especially when you're trying to sell multi-million-dollar orders to giant data centers.
It's everything.
Yeah.
That hard-won credibility isn't just about impressing investors on Wall Street. It gives confidence to the huge, normally risk-averse cloud providers, the Amazons, the Microsofts, the Googles.
Confidence that AMD can actually deliver these advanced chips in huge volume.
Exactly. Deliver volume, maintain quality control, offer reliable support, and crucially, provide a credible long-term roadmap. They need to know AMD will be there with the next generation and the one after that.
So that historical turnaround wasn't just history. It directly sets the stage for them entering what has to be the most demanding, highest stakes hardware market on the planet right now, AI acceleration.
Perfectly sets the stage. They've proven they can fight and win. Now the question is, can they win this fight?
Okay, that historical context is super important. It brings us right to now, section 2. AMD's very deliberate, very focused shift towards the data center and the specific hardware causing all this buzz.
Yeah, this isn't a side project for them. This looks like a full-on commitment, betting the company's future R&D, essentially, on winning in AI infrastructure.
Which is, arguably the most valuable slice of the entire global tech economy right now.
Without a doubt. And to make that pivot work, you need a killer product, a flagship, a championship.
And for AMD, that chip, the one all the sources are highlighting, is the MI300X GPU.
That's the one, their dedicated AI accelerator. Not just a tweaked gaming GPU, but something purpose-built for the insane demands of large language models, or LLMs.
You called it a heavyweight champion earlier, and it's designed specifically to go toe-to-toe with the reigning champ, NVIDIA's H100.
Absolutely. Direct competitor.
Okay, so let's get into the specifics. For someone listening, maybe they're not a chip architect, what makes the MI300X special? What advantages does it actually bring to the table that makes it a real threat to the H100 beyond just being, another option?
Right, this is where we need to get a little technical because the magic, or the potential magic, is in the silicon details. The MI300X stands out not just for its raw computational power, its FLOPS, or floating point operations per second.
Which is important for speed.
Crucial for speed, yes. But its real differentiator seems to be its memory architecture, specifically how much superfast memory it has right on the chip package.
Okay, explain that. Why is memory so critical here?
It uses something called high bandwidth memory, or HBM, the latest generation HBM3E. And the key is capacity. How much data can you cram into that super fast HBM right next to the processing cores?
And how does it compare to NVIDIA's H100 on that front?
Well, the standard NVIDIA H100, the workhorse everyone's been using, typically tops out around 80 gigabytes of HBM, which sounds like a lot.
It does.
But the sources are suggesting the MI300X can pack significantly more. We're hearing figures like 192 gigabytes, maybe even higher in certain configurations.
Wait, 80 GB versus potentially 192 GB, that's more than double.
It's a massive difference, a staggering difference, as you said.
But why? Why does having that much more fast memory matter so much in the AI race? Isn't raw speed the main thing?
Speed matters, but for these huge AI models, think GPT-4 scale, or even bigger ones coming down the pipeline, the sheer size of the model itself becomes a bottleneck.
The number of parameters in the model?
Exactly. Billions, sometimes trillions of parameters. To train these models efficiently, or even just to run them once they're trained, which is called inference, you ideally want the entire model, or at least very large chunks of it, to fit inside that ultra-fast HBM memory on the GPU.
Because going off-chip to slower system RAM is slow.
Excruciatingly slow, relatively speaking. It kills performance. If your model is too big for the GPU's HBM, you have two bad options. Either split the model across multiple GPUs, which has complexity and communication overhead,
Okay.
or you're constantly shuffling data back and forth between the fast HBM and the much slower main system memory, DDR-RAM. This data movement becomes the limiting factor, not the GPU's processing speed. It's called being memory bound.
So the MI300X, with its huge HBM capacity, is directly targeting that memory bottleneck, especially for inference.
Precisely. It's tailored silicon for training and running large AI models, as the sources put it. While it might not win every single speed benchmark against the H100 in raw FLOPS, its ability to hold much larger models entirely within its fast memory makes it incredibly attractive.
Particularly for companies deploying these models at scale. The inference part, serving users.
Exactly. Training is super important and high value, it gets the headlines. But inference, actually using the trained model to generate text, images, recommendations, whatever that's where the volume is, that's the ongoing, sustained workload for companies like Google, Meta, Microsoft.
And if the MI300X lets them run bigger models more efficiently or use fewer chips to run the same model because it fits in memory, that's a huge cost saving.
Huge. It means potentially higher density in their data centers, running more powerful AI services with less hardware. That's a compelling economic argument.
Okay, so the hardware itself has a clear value proposition, especially around memory. Now, who are the key customers AMD needs to convince? You mentioned hyperscalers earlier. Let's define that term a bit more. These aren't just regular companies buying a few servers.
No, definitely not. Hyperscalers are the behemoths. Think Microsoft Azure, Amazon Web Services, AWS, Google Cloud Platform, GCP, and increasingly Meta, Facebook, Instagram. These companies operate data centers at an unimaginable scale.
They build the fundamental infrastructure that runs a huge chunk of the internet and cloud computing.
Exactly. They don't just buy tens or hundreds of thousands of chips. They essentially validate a technology for the entire industry. Getting a design win with a hyperscaler is the ultimate stamp of approval.
Why is their validation so important?
Because it proves several things at once. One, the chip actually works reliably at massive scale. Two, the software stack needed to run it is mature enough for production. Three, the manufacturer, AMD in this case, has a supply chain robust enough to deliver potentially hundreds of thousands of these complex chips consistently year after year.
So when we read about AMD pursuing new cloud partnerships, this is what they're aiming for. Landing deals with the likes of Microsoft, AWS, Google, Meta.
That's the bullseye. The sources mentioned accelerated AI hardware adoption by these players as a key driver for AMD's recent performance. Meta, for example, has been very public about building out massive AI infrastructure, and reports suggest they're a significant AMD customer. Microsoft Azure is another big one, often cited.
These contracts must be colossal. Multi-year, multi-billion-dollar deals.
Absolutely. They are the lifeblood for a chip company competing at this level. Think about it. If AWS decides to offer instances based on the MI300X,
Meaning cloud servers customers can rent.
right, they aren't just buying the hardware. They're deeply integrating AMD's technology into their global service platform. They're training their support staff, writing documentation, optimizing their own software layers for it. That's a huge commitment.
And the sheer volume from just one of those contracts.
It could easily fund AMD's R&D for the next generation of AI chips, and maybe the one after that. It provides stability and predictable demand.
Okay, I see the massive incentive for AMD. But flip it around. What's the incentive for the hyperscalers? Why would they risk moving away from NVIDIA's H100? It's the established standard, highly optimized, everyone knows how to use it. Why introduce a new variable?
Two main reasons: risk diversification and cost control. Maybe a third is supply availability.
Explain the risk part.
As AI becomes absolutely central to their future business, driving everything from search results to cloud services to social media feeds, these hyperscalers get nervous about relying entirely on a single supplier, NVIDIA, for the most critical component.
What if NVIDIA has supply chain problems or decides to jack up prices even further?
Exactly. It creates a massive single point of failure and gives NVIDIA immense pricing power. Having a strong, viable second source like AMD is strategically vital for them. It keeps NVIDIA honest on pricing and ensures supply continuity if one vendor falters.
So it's not just about whether the MI300X is technically better on paper, it's about market dynamics.
It's hugely about market dynamics. That structural need for a credible alternative is one of the biggest tailwinds for AMD right now, maybe even more powerful than specific benchmarks. It's about ensuring a healthy, competitive market for the long haul.
And you mentioned availability.
Yeah, for a while, getting enough H100s was incredibly difficult. NVIDIA couldn't make them fast enough. If AMD can deliver MI300X chips in volume when NVIDIA can't, that's a massive advantage, even if the software isn't quite as mature yet. Sometimes good enough and available now beats perfect but unavailable.
Okay, that makes sense. So AMD has a compelling chip, targeting a key bottleneck, and the biggest customers have strong strategic reasons to want an alternative. Sounds good,
Yeah.
but there's always a but, isn't there?
There usually is. And in this case, the but is enormous. It's the software.
Right. Securing those huge contracts is step one. Getting developers to actually use the hardware effectively, that's the real mountain.
Exactly. Which brings us squarely to the software layer. People often talk about NVIDIA's software moat, and honestly, that might be an understatement. It's more like a fortress surrounded by decades of deep defenses.
We're talking about CU, right? Let's define that properly for listeners. It's not just a simple driver, is it? It's much more than that.
Oh, much, much more. CDO, which stands for Compute Unified Device Architecture, isn't just one piece of software. It's an entire parallel computing platform and programming model developed by NVIDIA over, 2 decades.
So what does that platform include?
Everything a developer needs to harness the power of NVIDIA GPUs for general-purpose computing, especially AI. It includes programming languages like CUDT++, compilers that optimize code specifically for NVIDIA hardware, a vast collection of libraries for common tasks.
Libraries for things like deep learning or matrix math.
Precisely. Highly optimized libraries like cuDNN for deep neural networks, cuBLAZE for linear algebra, Thrust for parallel algorithms, the list goes on and on. Plus, debugging tools, profiling tools to find performance bottlenecks. It's a complete mature development ecosystem.
And its dominance means?
It means that for the past 15, 20 years, almost every major AI breakthrough, every significant research paper, every foundational model, think the precursors to things like ChatGPT or Stable Diffusion, was developed, tested, and optimized using CUDA.
So all the expertise, all the existing code bases at universities, research labs, big tech companies, it's all built around CUDA.
Overwhelmingly, yes. If you're a top AI researcher or engineer, chances are you've spent years becoming an expert in CUDA development, learning its intricacies, figuring out how to squeeze every last drop of performance from NVIDIA GPUs.
Okay, I'm starting to see the scale of this moat. So if a big company or even a cutting-edge startup wants to switch from using NVIDIA H100s to AMD MI300Xs, it's not just unplugging one card and plugging in another.
Not even close. It's potentially a massive undertaking. You have years, maybe decades, of highly optimized, mission-critical code written specifically for CUDA. Porting that code to run it absolutely is. And that technological lock-in is a major reason why NVIDIA has been able to command such high prices and margins for chips like the H100. Customers haven't had a truly viable alternative that integrates smoothly into their existing software world.
Okay, so given that enormous software advantage for NVIDIA, how on earth can AMD possibly compete? What's their strategy against a 2-decade head start in developer mindshare and platform maturity? Are they trying to build a CUD clone?
No, and that's a really interesting part. AMD seems to understand they probably can't win by trying to replicate CUD directly or by forcing everyone into a new proprietary AMD ecosystem. Their counter strategy is fundamentally different.
Which is?
They're championing an open AI ecosystem built around ROCm. Instead of proprietary lock-in, they're pushing open standards and open source.
Open source. Okay, that sounds good in principle, but let's be critical. Is an open AI ecosystem truly viable right now? Or is that just, a nice marketing term for we don't have a mature proprietary ecosystem yet?
That is the absolute crux of the debate. And you've hit on the main skepticism.
Because historically, open source software stacks, while flexible, often lag behind tightly controlled, well-funded proprietary stacks in terms of, say, day one optimization for new hardware, overall stability, or ease of use for complex tasks. Isn't that a fair critique?
It's a very fair critique based on historical precedent in many areas. A single company like NVIDIA, pouring billions into optimizing CUD specifically for its own hardware, can often move faster and provide a more polished, integrated experience, at least initially.
So what makes AMD think open source can win this time in the highest performance computing arena?
Their bet seems to be strategic, and it leverages the nature of their target customers, those hyperscalers, again. The sources suggest this open strategy could foster broader innovation.
How so?
By making ROCm open source, AMD isn't solely responsible for its development and optimization. They're inviting, even relying on the wider community, including their major customers like Microsoft, Meta, maybe even Google, to contribute.
Wait, so they expect their customers to help fix and improve the software stack?
Yes. Think about it. If Meta is buying hundreds of thousands of MI300X chips, they have a vested interest in making ROCm work perfectly for their specific AI workloads. They have armies of brilliant engineers. AMD is essentially saying, here's the code. Help us make it better. Optimize it for your needs. Contribute those optimizations back.
So AMD is kind of crowdsourcing this software development burden while simultaneously positioning themselves as the anti-vendor lock-in choice.
That's a good way to put it. It's an appeal to the hyperscalers' deep-seated desire for more control and flexibility. If Microsoft invests engineering time in optimizing a part of ROCm, that improvement benefits everyone using ROCm, potentially, and it's not locked behind NVIDIA's proprietary license.
That sounds appealing strategically, especially for companies worried about NVIDIA's dominance. It offers technological autonomy down the line.
Huge appeal, especially for hyperscalers who are already building their own complex software layers on top of the basic hardware drivers and libraries anyway. An open foundation gives them more freedom to innovate at those higher levels.
Okay, but that open innovation, building that community, getting ROCm truly mature and stable, that takes time, years maybe. What about now? What's AMD's competitive edge right here, today, in late 2025 that makes customers willing to take the plunge despite the CUDA advantage?
The short-term answer. The competitive lens, according to the sources, zooms right in on AMD's efficiency and pricing strategy. This is the pragmatic, boots-on-the-ground reality.
So it comes down to money and power consumption.
Largely, yes, for the immediate battle. Let's say, hypothetically, the MI300X is maybe 10% slower than the H100 on a specific AI training task today using the current ROCm software.
Okay, so NVIDIA still wins on raw speed in that case.
Maybe. But what if the MI300X costs 20% less to buy? Or, critically, what if it uses 30% less electricity to perform that task, making it significantly more power efficient?
The total cost of ownership, TCO, that again.
Exactly. TCO is king in the data center. When you're buying 50,000 or 100,000 of these things, the initial purchase price, CapEx, is huge, obviously. But the ongoing running costs, OpEx electricity, cooling to remove the heat they generate, the physical space they take up, are astronomical over the 3 to 5 year lifespan of the hardware.
And electricity is a massive part of that OpEx.
Massive. If the MI300X genuinely offers better performance per watt, that translates directly into millions, potentially tens or hundreds of millions of dollars saved on electricity bills for a hyperscaler.
And it also means they can potentially pack more computing power into the same data center building with the same power and cooling limits, higher density.
Precisely. Better power efficiency means higher compute density, which is incredibly valuable when data center space and power are constrained. So even if ROCm isn't quite CDA level polished yet, a compelling TCO advantage can make customers willing to invest the effort to make it work.
Plus, the availability factor you mentioned. If AMD can ship when NVIDIA can't.
That changes the calculation entirely. Suddenly, the software maturity gap seems less important than just getting any powerful AI accelerators deployed.
So it's this complex dance. NVIDIA has the mature software fortress. AMD counters with potential hardware advantages in memory and efficiency, a lower price, better availability, and the long-term promise of an open ecosystem.
That's the tension right there. And it leads directly to the question of sustainability. The sources are clear. AMD's current high valuation and market buzz are fueled by this immediate demand and TCO argument. But their long-term success, their ability to truly challenge NVIDIA year after year,
depends on the software catching up.
It depends on long-term ecosystem adoption. They absolutely must close the gap with CDA. They need developers, researchers, and enterprises to eventually see ROCm not just as a necessary alternative, but as a genuinely competitive, perhaps even preferred platform.
So the hardware got them in the door. Pricing and efficiency are keeping them in the conversation now. But the software ecosystem is the key to staying in the house long term.
That's it exactly.
Yeah.
The software war, in many ways, it's much harder and longer than the hardware war. Hardware gets obsolete every couple of years. But software ecosystems, developer skills, code bases, they can persist for decades.
Which makes this push for an open ecosystem AMD's biggest gamble, but also potentially their biggest long-term payoff if it succeeds.
Absolutely. It's a bet on collective action, on the industry wanting to break free from single vendor dominance. It's a powerful narrative, but the technical execution has to be flawless over many years.
Okay, let's pivot slightly now and look closer at the market's reaction. We've talked tech, we've talked strategy, but how much of AMD's recent surge is based on these fundamentals we've discussed versus maybe market psychology? Investor emotion.
It's always a mix, isn't it? But it's crucial to go back to the trigger moment. The sources emphasize the stock really started trending after those strong quarterly earnings were reported in late 2025.
So it wasn't just wishful thinking. There was concrete financial data backing it up initially.
Right. It wasn't just vague optimism. The catalyst was measurable stuff. AMD reporting better than expected revenue, improving profit margins, and, very importantly, giving positive forward guidance, telling the market, we expect to ship a lot of these MI300 chips in the coming quarters.
So the numbers confirmed the strategic pivot was actually starting to pay off. They were selling the chips.
Exactly. The fundamentals provided the initial validation. That news acted like the spark.
But then the cultural narrative around the chip wars acted like gasoline poured on the fire.
That's a pretty good analogy, yeah. Once that positive financial news hit, the sentiment just exploded. It spread like wildfire across all the platforms where people talk about money and tech.
You see different angles depending on who's talking, right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
You have the professional financial analysts, the Wall Street types. They focus on the tangible stuff we've discussed. Confirmation of those big cloud partnerships, the accelerating pace of AI hardware adoption across industries, projecting revenue growth based on MI300 ramp-up. It's relatively sober, data-driven analysis.
But then you look at, say, social media. X, formerly Twitter, YouTube finance channels, Reddit forums.
Yeah, places like Reddit, Star Stocks, or investing. The tone shifts dramatically there.
How so? What's the focus in those online discussions?
It quickly moves beyond just price-to-earnings ratios or margin analysis. It becomes about the story, the narrative. The big question you see debated constantly is, can AMD actually dethrone NVIDIA?
It gets framed like a boxing match, a title fight, David versus Goliath.
Absolutely. The whole chip wars framing is a powerful cultural phenomenon.
Right.
People love a good competition story, especially in tech. We've seen it before, right?
Like Intel versus AMD back in the day, or Apple versus Microsoft.
Exactly. Or even older industrial rivalries, Boeing versus Airbus, VHS versus Betamax, if you want to go way back. There's something compelling about a direct clash between giants, or a challenger taking on the king.
But the stakes here feel even higher, don't they? Because AI feels so fundamental to the future.
They feel existential almost. Because whoever makes the best shovels for the AI gold rush, the chips, seems positioned to wield enormous influence over the next industrial revolution. So the rivalry isn't just business, it feels important.
And the sources pick up on this blend, right? They specifically mention that both innovation and storytelling both drive investor emotion in this case.
Yeah, it's not purely rational. The incredible technological leap that AI represents, combined with this classic underdog narrative of AMD's comeback, it's a potent mix for investors.
How much do you think the sheer desire for an underdog story, for competition, plays into the stocks movement versus just cold, hard calculations about MI300X sales?
It's impossible to put an exact percentage on it, of course.
Yeah.
But the storytelling aspect clearly amplifies the fundamental story. Think about it. AMD, the company that almost went bankrupt multiple times, the company that clawed its way back against Intel, is now taking on the seemingly invincible NVIDIA in the most important market on Earth. That's a narrative people want to believe in. They want to bet on that comeback story continuing.
And there was also the scarcity factor we touched on earlier. That plays into the emotion too, right?
Hugely. For months, maybe even years, the dominant story was you can't get enough NVIDIA chips. Enterprises were desperate. Cloud providers were scrambling. Then AMD steps up with the MI300X, a genuinely viable, high-performance alternative, especially with that memory advantage.
And they could actually deliver it in volume.
That was the key. They weren't just promising, they started shipping. They filled a massive, painful vacuum in the global supply chain. The market wasn't just rewarding AMD for innovation, it was rewarding them massively for solving an immediate critical bottleneck for the entire AI industry. Relief played a big part in that initial surge.
So back to the core question for this section. Hype versus fundamentals in late 2025. Was the stock surge justified by the actual revenue AMD was generating from MI300X, or did the price get ahead of itself due to the compelling story, the supply relief, and the desire for competition?
It's almost certainly a bit of both, feeding each other in a loop.
Yeah.
The fundamentals, earnings, guidance, provided the credible base. But the narrative, the excitement, the relief factor that acted as a massive multiplier on the valuation.
Because the potential market is just so vast.
Exactly. The sheer scale of the AI chip market, seen as the essential backbone of AI progress, means that any company perceived as a serious contender, especially one challenging a near monopoly, attracts enormous investment interest. The potential upside, if they succeed, is astronomical.
So AMD found itself perfectly positioned. They have the technological progress with MI300X validated by initial sales.
And they tapped right into this intense market excitement, this hunger for an alternative, this compelling underdog story.
Which means everyone is watching them now. Not just investors, but tech enthusiasts, developers, competitors.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to see if they can sustain this momentum.
Absolutely. The intense scrutiny itself confirms that the challenge is real. AMD isn't just a footnote anymore. They have the hardware chops, they have the strategic pricing angle, they have the open ecosystem narrative.
But the big question remains. Can they convert all that market excitement and initial traction into durable, long-term market share? Can they make the software ecosystem truly competitive? That's the cliffhanger.
That is the multi-billion-dollar cliffhanger indeed. Their long-term trajectory hinges on turning today's buzz into tomorrow's boringly reliable widely adopted infrastructure.
Okay, let's try to synthesize all of this for you, the listener. We've covered a lot of ground history, tech, software, market hype. Let's boil it down to the core factors that will really determine if AMD succeeds in this massive challenge against NVIDIA.
Sounds good.
Huh?
I think it comes down to three key pillars, really.
What's the first one?
Pillar one is the hardware itself, pure and simple. Success hinges on the continued performance and, crucially, the specialized advantages of chips like the MI300X. We talk about that HBM capacity edge, the power efficiency.
Right, especially for those huge large language models, both for training them and perhaps even more importantly for running inference at scale. That's the core product advantage they need to maintain and build on.
Exactly. That's the ticket to the game. You have to have competitive silicon. That's non-negotiable.
Okay, pillar one, competitive hardware with unique advantages. What's pillar two?
Pillar two is overcoming that giant software hurdle, the CEDA mode. This is arguably the tougher, longer battle.
And AMD's strategy here is ROCM, the open ecosystem approach, trying to build a community, leverage customer contributions, and position themselves as the flexible, non-proprietary alternative.
Right. It's ambitious, it's risky because open source maturity takes time, but it's their main weapon against CEDA's entrenched dominance. Success here means making ROCM not just usable, but genuinely attractive and reliable for developers. That's the platform battle.
Hardware, software. What's the third pillar?
Pillar three is market execution and capitalizing on the strategic window. They need to perfectly leverage the intense demand, both financial and strategic, for a diversified AI supply chain.
This means nailing those big cloud partnerships we discussed, delivering volume, maintaining quality, and continuing to offer that compelling total cost of ownership, the TCO advantage.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They need to make the financial and strategic incentives for hyperscalers and large enterprises so powerful that it justifies the effort and perceived risk of moving away from the comfort zone of CEDA. They need to execute flawlessly on delivery and support. That's the market imperative.
So hardware performance, overcoming the software gap, and nailing the market execution. Those are the three legs of the stool for AMD.
I think that sums it up well.
Yeah.
Miss on any one of those, and the challenge falters.
And this whole AMD versus NVIDIA story, it really does feel like a microcosm of something much bigger, doesn't it? This larger AI hardware revolution that's happening.
It perfectly reflects it. The incredible acceleration we're seeing in AI capabilities, chatbots, image generation, scientific discovery, it's all fundamentally dependent on the progress being made in this underlying silicon race.
The chips are the engine. Who builds the best engine and how widely available it is determines how fast everyone else can go.
Precisely. The outcome of this competition between AMD and NVIDIA, and potentially others down the line, will directly impact the pace of AI innovation globally. It affects the cost of training the next generation of models. It affects the accessibility of powerful AI tools for researchers, startups, and businesses everywhere.
If NVIDIA maintains its strong position, maybe innovation stays more centralized, prices stay high.
Potentially. The power dynamic remains concentrated. But if AMD, through its open strategy and competitive hardware, successfully carves out a major durable share,
Then you get fiercer competition, potentially lower prices, maybe faster innovation across the board as everyone pushes harder, and maybe more choice for developers.
that's the theory. More competition generally leads to faster progress and broader access. The architectural choices being made right now are proprietary versus open, the focus on raw speed versus memory capacity versus power efficiency. These decisions will ripple outwards.
They'll shape the economics of the biggest tech companies, the capabilities of future AI, maybe even geopolitical balances to some extent. It's huge.
It really is. It reaches far beyond just the stock prices of these two companies.
Which brings us, I think, to a final thought for you, our listener, to chew on after hearing all this. We've laid out the arguments, the technology, the strategies.
The established fortress versus the determined challenger.
Exactly. So considering everything NVIDIA's 2 decades of CU dominance, the developer lock-in, the software maturity, versus AMD's hardware innovations, the immense pressure from hyperscalers for cost savings and supply diversity, and the appeal of an open source future.
Which force do you ultimately think will be more powerful in shaping the future of AI hardware over the long run?
Is it the deep, sticky advantage of an established proprietary software ecosystem like CUDA? Or is it the relentless economic and strategic pressure driving demand for efficient pricing, technological alternatives, and open standards?
There's no easy answer. It's a fascinating battle playing out right now.
A battle being fought chip by chip, line of code by line of code. Thank you for exploring this incredibly high-stakes rivalry with us today.
Always a pleasure to unpack these trends.
Next time on Trending Unpacked, we'll switch gears from silicon to cinema, exploring how Hitchcock's Psycho still shapes the way we experience fear and suspense.